The meeting is called back to order at 7:02 p.m. Please rise, and the clerk will lead us in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, tonight is the reading of notice of the annual budget hearing. But before we do that, we have to approve the agenda. So may I have a motion and a second that the agenda of May 1st, 2018 be approved as submitted?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. I am always jumping ahead of myself here. All right. Annual budget hearing. Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, as set by statute, it is now time for holding the 2018-2019 annual budget hearing of the Penfield Central School District. My name is Catherine Dean, and I am president of the Penfield Central School District Board of Education. The vote on the budget and for members of the Board of Education is in 2 weeks and not at this meeting. The polls will be open on Tuesday, May 15th, 2018 in the high school gym from 6 o'clock a.m. until 9 o'clock p.m. The district has continued extended voting hours to make it more convenient for the residents to vote. The notice of annual meeting, budget vote, and election has been duly published according to law in the Daily Record, Rochester Business Journal, and Penfield Post. Affidavits will be filed with the minutes of the meeting. It is customary, however, to read a summary of the notice. The summary is as follows. Notice is hereby given that the annual vote and election will be held at Penfield High School on Tuesday, May 15th, 2018, from 6 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, wherein qualified voters of the district may vote concerning the election of 3 members of the Board of Education, 1 budgetary proposition, 1 bus purchase proposition, and 1 proposition for capital improvements as follows. The election of 3 members to the Board of Education. Catherine Dean, Mark Elledge, and Carol Nazra currently hold these seats. The candidates running to fill these seats in ballot order are William B. Yeager, Catherine Dean, and Mark Elledge. The propositions are as follows. Proposition number 1 pertains to the appropriation of the necessary funds to meet estimated expenses for the ensuing school year 2018-2019. The proposition to be voted upon states, shall the following resolution be adopted to wit, to adopt the annual budget of the school district for the fiscal year 2018-2019 in the amount of $98,183,269 and to authorize the requisite portion thereof to be raised by taxation on the taxable property of the district. Proposition number 2 pertains to the purchase of 3 66-passenger type school buses and 4 30-passenger type school buses. The proposition to be voted upon states, shall the following resolution be adopted to wit, resolved that the Board of Education of the Penfield Central School District is hereby authorized and directed to purchase 3 66-passenger type school buses and 4 30-passenger type school buses, and to expend from the capital fund, therefore, a sum not exceeding $598,000, with $400,000 of such cost to be appropriated and expended from the 2018-19 general fund budget, and to appropriate and expend the balance not to exceed $198,000 from the 2017 School Bus Reserve Fund, established pursuant to Section 3651 of the Education Law. Proposition number 3 pertains to capital improvements. The proposition to be voted upon states, shall the following resolution be adopted to wit, resolved that the Board of Education of the Penfield Central School District is hereby authorized to undertake certain capital improvements consisting of the construction of additions to and construction and reconstruction of school buildings and facilities, various site improvements, and the acquisition of certain original furnishings, equipment, and apparatus, and other incidental improvements required in connection therewith for such construction and school use. all at an estimated maximum aggregate cost of $22,588,000, and to appropriate and expend from the existing Building Capital Reserve Fund $7 million for such costs, and that the balance of such cost, or so much thereof as may be necessary, shall be raised by the levy of a tax to be collected in annual installments, with such tax to be partially offset by state aid available therefor. And in anticipation of such tax, debt obligations of the school district as may be necessary not to exceed $15,588,000 shall be issued. I have available the complete notice of annual meeting, budget vote, and election as printed in the Daily Record, Rochester Business Journal, and Penfield Post, and will be pleased to show it to anyone who wishes to see it tonight. All right, so now we have a summary of the budget, which is item 4B on your agenda, which I believe Dr. Putnam and Dr. Sansucci will address.
Yes. So it is our budget hearing, and officially, and I'll start it off and then turn it over to Dr. Sansucci. First of all, we've seen this slide before, but in Penfield, we do look at the concept of building a bright future. And based on test scores through New York State and the Regents program, all 4 of our Penfield elementary schools have ranked in the top 14 out of 163 schools in the Rochester area in 2017. Bay Trail Middle School ranked number 3 out of 95 area middle schools, and Penfield High School was both ranked and also named in Newsweek magazine's list of America's top high schools. And then overall, our district is ranked 4th out of 67 area school districts in 2017 based on 4 years of test scores. And then I'm not ashamed to publicly say that while test scores may rank us very strongly, I'll go toe-to-toe with any superintendent that we have the best school district around, maybe because my kids also go to school here, but I know that our teachers do wonderful things in the classroom and our principals are leading great schools. Just looking at data, when we look at our district, when we look at 2017, graduation rate of 97%, where the state average is 80%. 91% of last year's graduates continued on to college. 96% of our graduates earned a Regents diploma, and 74% of those students earned an advanced designation degree. Our highly competitive SAT scores exceed state means. In Penfield, our average score is a 1220, where the state is a 1057. And I do like to note that we focus really on our curriculum in Penfield. So our teachers in math and ELA are not stopping instruction to do SAT prep for our students. They're teaching guaranteed and viable curriculum, as Jim has talked to us many times. And because of that, our scores continue to rise in the SAT. We also have AP Scholars. 127 students at the high school were named AP Scholars, meaning that they took a number of AP exams, advanced placement tests, and scored highly on them. Just announced, Nancy Bradstreet sent a tweet out just recently that again, 2018, Penfield has been named the best community for music education. We have 97 of our students who've been selected for state and county festivals. Science Olympiad, outside of the classroom, an extracurricular activity for students focused on science and technology. Our high school team earned 40 medals at regionals this year, 6 medals at the state competition, and Bay Trail earned 30 medals at regionals and 2 at states. This is just a growing team, and it really says a lot about our students, our faculty, and working together in the area of STEM. Athletics as well, our students do well both in the classroom and on those playing fields, and our boys volleyball team went on to win states, and we had a wrestler as well who ranked at state championships, and then obviously numerous county and sectional championships too. And all of this sums up, I just want to say thank you to our school board. Mark and I have been doing what we refer to as the road show, where we go to all the PTAs and PTOs and faculty meetings and the Rotary, talking about our budget for this year. And one of the things I get to share at each one is a heartfelt thank you to our school board that consistently maintains the same goals. And over the time, in the 4 years that I've been here and a couple years before that, the board really has worked to maintain consistent goals, which really allows us as a district to start planning 3-year and 5-year plans, because we know that the goals from the school board are going to remain relatively consistent. There's little changes over the summer, but these 3 major goals around academic achievement, especially focused on the whole student, partnerships, and fiscal responsibility have sort of been our light in the darkness as we move forward to say what are the decisions we're making. We want to always be able to tie them back to the board goals. So thank you very much to the school board. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Sansucci. He'll get into the nitty-gritty of the budget overview for 2018-19.
Thank you. So I will be walking through the budget in a format different than what we've seen it in before. So tonight is the budget hearing. It's not the budget for Penfield Central School District has already been adopted. The board did that at the last meeting, but school law has a long history in New York State, and if you read the law at this meeting, what you get a sense of, and you got a little sense of it tonight when the board president read the notice, the vote is not at tonight's meeting. The law sort of envisions that tonight is the night when we would all gather at the one-room schoolhouse, put together our budget, talk about it a little bit, and then hold up our hands and say, yes, we agree to that'll be our budget for next year. That's not what happens anymore, obviously, because of the size of districts and the need for extended voting. We can't all gather in this room and vote on our budget. So that's gone away. But this meeting lives on as sort of a remnant of that. It's the last formal presentation of the budget. And as part of that, New York State has piled on certain requirements. This budget, as I go through it, it'll be a presentation different than the ones we're used to. We present, think about the budget in ways that make sense to us and to our community. We split it up in the ways that you're used to, because that's what has made sense for us and helps us to understand it. New York State tonight has a requirement around how it be presented that they adopted a number of years ago with the idea that it would allow voters, residents, and legislators really to compare school districts across the state. If we all look at it the same way, if we all split everything up the same way, if we all package it in the same way, that it'll improve transparency and improve communication around the budget. You'll have to make your own decision about whether this is successful about that as we go on. But there's also a number of notices, required legal notices, public notices, and so on that I'll be stepping through. So before I get into the sort of that quagmire, just the quick facts of what this budget represents: 2.8% budget-to-budget increase. The levy increase is which is the amount of money we collect in total in terms of taxes, increases by 2.6%, which is below our tax cap. So that means at the most fundamental level that this budget will pass with 50% plus one. We do not need a supermajority, a 60% supermajority to pass this budget. And the tax rate increase in the town of Penfield is 2.83, or about 72 cents per thousand of assessed value. There's lots of complexity in that that I'll talk about as we go along. Dr. Putnam talked a little bit about the many fine things that we've been able to support through this budget. I would also, at the other side of this, focus a little bit on efficiencies. This board and this school's managed through the years to try and find efficiency wherever we can. You see that in energy efficiencies as we've replaced windows, roofs, boilers, and so on. It's always with an aim towards reducing our long-term costs. We've been careful, and this board's been great in supporting long-term financial planning, looking not just from budget to budget to budget and managing from crisis to crisis, but really looking out and taking into consideration what's in the best long-term interests of both the school and the students and the taxpayers. To do that, we've formed a number of partnerships. we were amongst the earliest members of both the healthcare and workers' compensation consortiums, where schools, Monroe County schools, banded together to try and get control of costs in health insurance and workers' compensation, and some of the more the very expensive benefits areas of our budget. Those are big things. Those are significant things that we've taken a leadership role in, but we also do lots of little things. So as an example of that, we participate in 24 cooperative bids. We bid our gas, we bid our electricity, we bid paper, we bid supplies. Not always because it's legally required, sometimes it is, but always because we want to make sure that that everyone has a chance to participate, and because we believe that reduces costs over the long term. With all that said, with all the good things that this budget supports, with all the work that we've put into it over the years, where we're at right now is $98,183,269,000. That's about a $2.6 million increase, or 2.8%. This is a pie different than the one I traditionally show you. The one you normally see has it all split up the way we look at it. This pie splits it up after bucketing all of our expenses the way the state would have it. Administrative costs are 11% of our budget. Capital, which includes expenses for debt service, for construction, and so on, is 13% of our budget, and program is 75% of the budget. I'm going to a much more detailed backup document to this is available online and in all of our buildings and at the public library. But just for tonight's conversation, I'm going to quickly show you the components that support each of those pie pieces. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I just want to sort of note some of the highlights and talk a little bit about how this works. So the administrative component, $10.9 million, up about $240,000. And if you look through the components of what's driving that increase, you'll see the majority of it is in employee benefits. So one of the fundamental differences about this budget is normally in our process, we look at benefits for everyone all at once here in this one pile. This budget prorates them and splits all the benefits out to each of the components. So benefits are going up in our budget as a whole. We saw that in all our previous presentations. It shouldn't be a surprise when we split it up that we see it here. But what it does give you is that sense of how that drives the budget. In terms of our component increase, that $10.9 million, better than half of the increase itself is driven by the cost of benefits. And you see changes up and down throughout the other components of the budget. In program, this program includes all the instructional components of the budget, and I think this is interesting and sometimes confusing. It also includes transportation. The state of New York determined when they were, again, deciding how this would be presented, that transportation's really a part of program. Because without access to school, without the capacity to get kids from home to school, instruction's not possible. So they felt it appropriate that the costs of transportation are reported here as part of the program component. So you see that. You also see contract transportation, census, and again, the benefits that support those people. In total, about $74.1 million. And finally, the capital component. This is operation and maintenance of plant, refund of taxes, purchase of buses, transfers for bus purchase, for capital project, for school lunch, debt service, and again, employee benefits associated with all of those folks. This, again, is about $13.1 million. Those three components together, again, $98.2 million, or the $2.6 million increase. The expense side of the budget, a little bit different than the way we've looked at it, but nothing really new in terms of content. On the revenue side of the budget, this is a more detailed look at revenues, or I should say a different look at revenues. You can see state aid increasing about 5.1%. That's increase. This was not a bad state aid year in terms of foundation aid. Our single largest aid category, which went up about 2%, but the majority of that increase driven by building aid, which is reimbursement from past capital projects. It's part of our long-term planning around future capital projects. So we try and align that money so that it stabilizes the tax rate so that we don't have peaks and valleys. In part of that will be financing as we go forward the capital project that we're proposing for tonight. So that's all a piece of that long-term planning that we talked about earlier. Local revenues, in terms of transfers from workers' comp, we brought in $500,000 this year to bring that down to an appropriate level. We don't repeat that, so that's a decrease in transfers from reserves. We maintain a $100,000 draw from our ERS reserve and appropriate about $2 million per year for the reduction of taxes from previous year's budgets. So that leaves the tax items. Payments in lieu of taxes are increasing, county sales tax, and the real property tax levy. With that, the overall the levy increase with this year's levy increase will still remain a district that over the course of time has a budget under 2%. So we like to say that we are a 2% budget before 2% budget was possible. Or was mandated, not possible, and we believe that this is going to continue that. The levy is what we are in control of in the budget, and we want to continue to emphasize that. We're victims of some other components of the budget, of equalization, of assessments. We don't control state aid. This is what we work to control, and I think this argues that we've been successful over time. In terms of equalization rate changes, there are numerous equalization rate changes in the community. This is what I referenced, something that we are not in control of. Brighton is undergoing reassessment, so they will go from an 89% equalization rate to 100. That equalization rate, what it represents is the change from, is what is a ratio, I should say, of what assessment is to what you could sell your house at in the marketplace. So because of a hot market, essentially, that gap, the gap between what the house is assessed at versus what it sells at has grown. It's grown to 89% for last year in Brighton. Brighton's reassessing to bring everything back into line, so next year they'll return to 100. That means some people's assessments will increase in the town of Brighton. Penfield's rate will decline from 100% to 95%, and then that rate will return to 100% after this year's reassessment. Masson and Walworth also falling to 98%, so a reassessment will be in their future. And Parrington's going to reassess to maintain the 100% rate. This then, because of those changes in equalization rate, drives changes in the assessed valuation or in the tax per thousand of assessed valuation. So you can see here decreases in Brighton, and in the other towns, and an increase in the town of Penfield. That's really driven by those changes in assessment and by the changes in equalization rate. I have some slides here that I'll go through fairly quickly that are just really intended to show how that equalization process is intended to assure that across the towns, with varying and different equalization rates, the mathematics of this process is intended to ensure essentially fairness, that the owner of a $100,000 or $200,000 house, a market value house in any of our towns, should pay about the same tax bill. So this is equalization rates from 17-18, from this tax year, along with what the tax rate would be. And you can see the tax rate is higher in the town of Brighton. The tax rate is higher because we apply that rate to assessed valuation. And so the math of this works out that that higher $28 tax rate times the $89,000 assessment means that the owner of that $100,000 house pays about the same in taxes as the other communities, as a taxpayer with similar house in our other communities. Same thing works in 18-19. But what's changed, what changes because of the equalization rate and the level of assessment, is that rate. It goes up, it goes down, and that causes confusion. At this point, these are still based on estimated assessments. We the town assessors are not yet done with their process, and they won't finalize the rolls for some time. But we're obligated to provide an estimate so that our voters can make an informed decision about what they would want to vote on. This then is 129,000, or I'm sorry, in Penfield, that 8.3% increase turns into, for a home with Basic Star, a $129 increase. In the other towns, particularly in Brighton, what that rate means for you as an individual with your tax and your total tax bill is going to depend on what your assessment changed, which we don't know. This is right if your assessment didn't change, but most of them will have. So that's a piece of the unknown. So that's the budget. Also required tonight are a number of required disclosures, legal notices, report cards, and so forth. One of those is required compensation information. So we're required to report salaries of anyone in the district who has the name superintendent in their title, or no matter what they earn, or who earns more than $132,000 for the year. This is the list of those folks. This is the property tax report card. Essentially, the upper, you can see it's in sort of, and I apologize for the size of this type, but we sort of do the best we can. What this is intended to tell you above the line, the top half of this, is that we are under the tax cap. That the budget that we are proposing does not require a supermajority. Underneath that is some reporting on restricted, appropriated, and unrestricted fund balances. So the restricted fund balance is essentially our total reserves and fund balances. The appropriated fund balance is what we've used for reduction of taxes, so that's applied as a revenue against taxes. It's a reduction. And unrestricted fund balance is the 4%, what we think of as the 4%, the rainy day fund, if you will. New this year is this detailed list of the reserves and of the use of reserves in the budget. This is very similar, although updated from what the board looked at the early part of our process, where as one of the last things before we launch into our budget report, we do some long-range budget planning. We talk about the future, what the future of our budgets look like, and we talk about reserves, use of reserves, and how we're planning to use those. So this is essentially a summary of that, including, as an example, our uses of reserves in this budget. So as part of one of the propositions that the voters will be approving, we're using $400,000 to support bus purchase out of the bus purchase reserve. So we're calling that out in this. We're showing the reserve balances as of 3/31 and what we estimate they will be at 3/18 after transfers out and after transfers in. So again, this is just intended as a brand new requirement this year to improve transparency and help folks understand. I think for some districts it'll be new. For us, it's really a follow-up on what we've done previously in the budget cycle. School budget notice. Again, this is, you'll see some of the same numbers. This is another requirement. The upper part of it, again, essentially shows that we're under the cap, and then it has two additional components. In the event of a defeated budget, of a multiply defeated budget, and we had to adopt, and if it were, we would be required to adopt a contingent budget. That contingent budget, in the event of two defeats, cannot include a property tax increase. So the change in the law a number of years ago was that, it used to be that schools could vote and vote and vote and vote and try and try and try. Now there's two tries. This original, an original offering and a revote on a common date. If the budget were to fail at that revote, the board would be obligated to make whatever reductions are necessary to reduce the required levy to zero. That could mean you could throw lots of money from reserves into the budget. It could mean you could reduce program. You would have lots of choices and hard decisions that you would face. As part of this, we're obligated to show what that budget might look like. So this is a prorated reduction, taking out some of the required reductions. Certain things just can't be in a budget, for example, some kinds of equipment. So those are taken out, some transfers are taken out, and then the remaining reductions are prorated to show what it might look like as the board worked to get to zero. Star exemption impact is again a required notice. The state legislature just wants to be sure that we remind people that Star is reducing their taxes, that they've done a good thing, and that we should remind them of that annually. So for this year, it's $745,000. Those are did I say $745? That didn't sound right when it came out. Sample ballot. This is not a part of the required disclosure, but we just like to go through it. It's already been read, but the proposition number 1 is the adoption of the annual budget. Proposition number 2 is the bus purchase resolution, and you can see here the $400,000 from reserve. The total cost of the proposition, $598,000. So the other $198,000 is in our general fund budget. Proposition number 3 is the capital construction project that we are proposing for this year, the elementary school additions project. And finally, the sample ballot is, there are 3 open seats for the upcoming year, and we have 3 candidates running. This is the order that they will appear on the ballot, and folks will have the opportunity to vote for 3. Whoops. So with that, that's the conclusion of my summary of the for the annual meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. If there's anything I didn't cover or that you have questions about, I'd be happy to answer them. And we also, I believe, need to take questions if there are any from the audience.
Mm-hmm. Board members, any questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Mark. Yes, this is the comment period. How long do I get? Anyone in the audience have any comments about the budget? Okay. All right, thank you. I will now make a brief statement. At our last meeting, the board adopted the 2018-19 school budget. This proposal continues the board's commitment to providing our students with an outstanding educational program and our residents with an outstanding value. The proposed $98 million budget was put together and carefully reviewed over a period of several months. We have worked diligently to find spending efficiencies while formulating a budget that continues to support the whole student. This year, we are asking for your support of a proposed tax levy increase of 2.6%, which is below our state-mandated tax levy limit of 2.75%. It is important to note that over the past 10 years, we have offered budgets with tax levy increases averaging 1.8%, making us a 2% district long before the tax cap was imposed. In addition to the general fund budget, you will see 2 propositions on the ballot. The first is for the purchase of 7 replacement school buses, which will be funded through the School Bus Reserve Fund and the General Fund budget. The second is for the 2018 Elementary Additions Project, which includes additions and renovations to 3 of our elementary schools and renovations at Bay Trail and the high school. As a board, we are passionate about the value of the education provided by the Penfield School District. We will continue to advocate for our students and our district in order to preserve the excellent educational program we provide for our students in balance with our residents' budgets. Thank you, and please remember to vote on Tuesday, May 15th between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. at Penfield High School. The annual budget hearing has ended. Thank you. Okay. All right, we're on page 2 of the agenda. Let's see, may I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as amended, is written in your packet for, yes, thank you. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, thank you. Treasurer's report. Attached is the Treasurer's report for the month ending March 31st, 2018. May I have a motion and a second that the Treasurer's report, including the cash report, General Fund cash report, the General Fund revenue status report, General Fund budget status report, School lunch fund cash report, and School lunch fund revenue and expense budget report for the month ending March 31st, 2018 be approved?
So moved.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. No special reports. Visitor speaking time. This is the time that the board allows for residents to bring concerns and comments to the board. Comments should not be related to any particular individual or to the specifics of negotiations, since it is not proper for the board to discuss these issues in public session. A request to speak comment form must be filled out prior to the start of the citizens' comment period and given to the district clerk. It is expected that speakers will limit their comments to 5 minutes or less. The board reserves the right to limit the total amount of time spent on the citizens' comment period based on the length of the agenda. Written communication to the Board of Education is encouraged as well. And Mr. Polidori, did you still wish to speak? Mm-hmm.
Good evening, everybody. The topic that I will be discussing isn't going to be any different from what I've been discussing before. I guess before I get into it, I just want to recognize that I appreciate what has to be done to keep the district running. While I'm very focused and committed and passionate to the cause that I'm talking about, I understand and can see the amount of time and effort, especially as a parent and going into these schools, the commitment and the need to keep operations and services going for these students. So I just don't want to think that I've ever glossed over on that. So that being said, members of the school board and Penfield residents, I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. Continuing a subject of school safety. I'd like to thank the members of the board who continually keep an open discussion with me on this subject. Top button, thank you very much, because we talked a couple of weeks ago as well. For the record, and to apprise those who have not seen my prior communications, my concern is for the safety of the student body in light of the more recent epidemic of school violence. The safety of our children must be the #1 priority, and by our administrators and state officials, we must overcome the financial challenges to achieve this goal and have at least 1 school resource officer in 6 schools in our district. We've witnessed the tremendous horrors of Kentucky, Parkland, Great Mills, and last week we even had a threat close to home in Honeoye Falls of potential violence, which scared students, parents, and staff alike. There are no boundaries to this, and we cannot be fooled by the absence in our own district. In my last statement, I asked, why is school safety not on the agenda for each school board meeting? Again, today I will ask that question for the safety of all Penfield student population. I'm continuing the communications with the New York State Legislature as well. I stated on March 27th that I'm reviewing the many bills and proposals that have been submitted, such as S7811A, S7810A, to create a school resource officer education aid program and grant availability sponsored by Pat Gallivan, but these bills are still not enough. Andrew Pollock, who you might know, sadly lost his daughter, Meadow, in Parkland, Florida. Andrew has, through what I can only imagine be supernatural strength, creating a new organization called Americans for Children's Lives and School Safety, otherwise known as CLASS. The organization outlines an 8-point plan to help ensure the security of children in each public school. Point 3 is probably the one area that most schools either do not implement or ignore, which is protect the interior. Place armed guards within every school through the use of SROs, school resource officers, a guardian program which empowers schools to arm a highly trained staff or school safety specialists that gives priority hiring to retired veterans and law enforcement officers. So in the absence of New York State creating and passing legislation to allow schools to have armed teachers or security professionals, we need to protect the interior with SROs and other innovative and thoughtful ways. And getting those ideas and innovations discussed and implemented quickly. Which leads me to a point that brings me concern that I've become more educated on with my time here over the past several months, which is propositions to amend the budget. So on Tuesday, March 13th, when we had a meeting last, or a meeting, I read that the propositions to the budget must be filed by that following Friday by 70 signed voters. So in other words, if I wanted to bring forth a proposition to add SROs to Penfield and perhaps voted on by the electorate, I had 3 days to get 70 signatures. And although the board technically informed the public, we are still public uninformed and unable to comply with a very short timeline, and there was nothing that I could do. I would think that the board would agree to give more ample time for its citizens to assert their voices on behalf of anything, let alone school safety, or any other tax-paying interest, and that wouldn't be that much of a unreasonable request. I mentioned this earlier. We, of course, have to update infrastructure, improve operations, provide for programs, existing contractual obligations, but we should carefully and meticulously look at ways where we can shift funding to fully secure our schools, and I would like to understand how we can do that. In each meeting that I've been at, Dr. Sansucci reviews the district goals. And under that first goal of academic achievement and excellence, it states, each Penfield school will provide a safe, engaging learning environment. Safe is the first word in the first statement. In order to truly make our students safe, we must protect the interior. And I'd like to share something with you that happened this evening, which I was really unaware could happen. But Andrew Pollock's wife, who's part of this organization, actually sent me an email back.
Okay, we're running out of time, though.
All right, I'm going to just share this last little piece. She thanked me for my note. She wants to make sure that school boards take this seriously. She wants to let people know that they are trying to find a way to voice change, and they are very focused on the schools to be safer for their children. I encourage you to look up this organization. I encourage you to look up Julie and Andrew, and I encourage you to look up CLASS. This is a national movement now. This is not John at the school board meeting anymore. And these people are reaching out to folks like me, and I'm reaching back out to them. But thank you. Greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Polidori.
John, thank you very much, and I appreciate the comments you mentioned. I just want to share around, you made mention of all that goes into running a school district, and I appreciate the kudos you gave to the board, and as always, pick up the phone and give me a call. I'm happy to speak with you as we continue to look at the possibility and what it might look like with SROs. I just want to comment on one piece, which is that all of the daily things that we do to run a district don't all make it to the agenda on the school board. And so please know that for anybody in the community, that although we may not be talking about SROs at school board meetings on the agenda, there are multiple meetings, safety audits, reviews of our safety plan that are always ongoing. So I just wanted to share that and mention as well that the Monroe County Superintendents meet monthly. Last month we met with Sheriff Todd Baxter. SRO conversation came up because the reality is they don't have the staff. So even if the district were to say we want 6 and we want them for next year, they don't have the staff yet to be able to support all the school districts. So we're continuing to monitor and take a look at what we can do. While we don't have SROs in our districts, we have lots of internal safety precautions that are in place and that we're going to continue to build upon. But this is a conversation you and I can always continue to have offline as we continue to review what's the best steps in order to keep our schools safe for not just our students, but our staff as well. So I just appreciate it and wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I want to reiterate, we appreciate your kind words about acknowledging all the work that goes into running the school, and it's quite detailed. And I also wanted to remind you that we are still on a county level through the legislative committee. This is an ongoing conversation that we're still having. Nobody's ignoring this, and I wanted you to know that.
Okay,
and
thank you.
And we appreciate your time coming in and letting us know how you feel again tonight. And thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Claire.
So these past 2 weeks at Harris Hill, students collected money for the penny games to benefit UNICEF and Make-A-Wish Foundation. And students filled the main office with cards and posters showing how much they appreciate Harris Hill's secretaries and administrative professionals. And lastly, Harris Hill students participated in the Penfield Unified Basketball Games. At Cobbles, 5th graders went on a field trip to the Memorial Art Gallery, and students dressed in colonial gear and showed off their research about early American history at Cobbles Colonial Day celebration. At Indian Landing, 5th graders took an earth walk to clean up the school grounds the Friday before Earth Day, and 4th graders showcased their American history projects at the New York State Historical Extravaganza. At Scrivener, a DARE officer delivered a powerful message to students about speaking out against bullying and learning valuable lessons about drugs and violence and how to keep themselves and others safe. And lastly, student council members are working to make blankets for animals at Lollipop Farms. At Bay Trail, meteorologist Glenn Johnson stopped by Bay Trail to talk about the science of weather and meteorology. And at Penfield High School, students performed in music ensembles around the PHS auditorium in the annual prison concert. And in honor of Earth Day, the Environmental Club collected trash at Corbett's Glen, and PHS had their annual junior prom at Lotus Hill this past weekend.
Everyone's busy. Thank you, Claire. Any questions or comments for Claire? All right, thank you. Oh, yes, Barb.
I have something. Today was what day at the high school?
Oh, decision day.
Decision day.
And?
I'm going to UCLA next year.
Oh, congratulations. Yay. Very nice,
So
Claire.
December, we'll do the board can travel to visit our former board rep at the UCLA California weather. I think would be nice in December.
I think so, too. Do you know what you're going to study?
Yeah, I'm going to study pre-computational biology.
Okay. Of course you are. That's
awesome.
wonderful, Claire. We're very proud of you, and we appreciate all the work you've done for us this past year.
Thank you for this
Oh,
opportunity.
yeah. Well, thank you. We appreciate having you. All right, superintendent's report.
I am not going to the UCLA, but
You might.
Well, you
Yeah.
might want to go in December.
I might.
But Claire's going to be coming here for the holidays.
It's true. I actually
no,
decision
no.
to
The
Mark
parents are moving.
Sansucci and I.
Your parents are moving there?
Are they really? Oh wow.
Yeah, that's why they let me apply.
That's the whole time I was thinking I would be
There.
They're moving to San Francisco.
Oh,
Love it.
wow, okay. All right.
So,
Just give us
So we
their
have a place
address.
to stay, maybe.
perfect. Perfect. Dr. Sansucci and I got our traveling roadshow of the budget, and we were at the high school. So not only were the students wearing their sort of decision day T-shirts that they had them, but all the staff wear us too, and just sort of it's a nice opportunity to showcase for students 9 through 12 just all the choices you have in terms of where you may want to go if you're heading off to a 4-year or 2-year school after high school, which is really neat. I do have some student and staff honors. Lots of great students throughout our district, and so just a huge congratulations to PHS senior Elias Owen, who placed second in the 35th annual English-speaking Union National Shakespeare Competition. And he won a full scholarship to the American Shakespeare Center Theater Camp and plans to pursue a BFA in musical theater from the University of Cincinnati's College Conservatory of Music next year. So really, just really talented. There's a press release about this young man as well, and really proud of him. RPO Award, congratulations to Harris Hill instrumental music teacher Pam Fracklin, who was awarded the 2018 RPO Outstanding Music Educator Award, and she'll be recognized at the RPO concert on May 10th. And I know that Mark Sansucci and I were also at Harris Hill presenting the budget today, and I know a number of their staff are trying to get there to be there on the 10th with her, which is really wonderful. We have congratulations to PHS junior Suzanne John on winning first place in the poetry category in the 2018 Sokol contest sponsored by the Friends and Foundation of the Rochester Public Library. And I really love this one. PHS senior Morgan Stewart was honored by the Rochester Police Department with a Do the Right Thing Award for her volunteerism and leadership. Morgan helped organize a Red Cross blood drive here at PHS, as well as volunteers at a retirement home and volunteers as a teaching assistant for at-risk youth, among many other activities. So congratulations to Morgan. Obviously, the Rochester Police Department are proud of her, and so is her Penfield family. Penny Games fundraiser, Harris Hill raised $1,540.22 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation and UNICEF through its annual Penny Games fundraiser. So congratulations to Harris Hill students and families and staff as well for all the great work with that fundraiser. I feel like I just read the slide last year, so these years are really sort of blending in. But next week is National Teacher Appreciation Week, and it's really for celebrating and recognizing teachers who lend their passion and skills to educating our students. We take this opportunity to give special thanks to our teachers for their dedication and hard work. Our teachers change the lives of students every day, and their impact extends far beyond the boundaries of the classroom. And this is both for this slide and the next. I'll just take a step off of the superintendent role and say I'm also a father of students in Penfield. We moved to Penfield from a district that will go unnamed because I worked here for 3 months as an assistant principal, and I went home and I said, the staff is amazing, the kids are amazing, the community is amazing. And thankfully, I have a loving wife that said, let's move. So we started looking for a house in Penfield. And it worked out that I was able to be asked to be superintendent. I appreciate that, but we would have lived here regardless because I just think it's an incredible community. And we've had nothing but positive teachers working hard for our students. So I just can't say thank you enough to them. And I know the school board and district office feels the same way. The other one that always falls right around the same time is National School Nurse Day. So on Wednesday, May 9th of next week, we honor our school nurses who make a difference in the lives of students every day. This year's theme, I love, is School Nurses, Advocates for the 21st Century Student Health. And our nurses truly lead the way to advance health, support education by keeping our students safe, healthy, and ready to learn. And so thank you today and always. And I will just step out of my superintendent role for a minute to, as I can kindly do, a shout out to my wife, who's a school nurse in a local district to go unnamed. And I know what school nurses have to deal with. If you work in a hospital setting as a nurse, the pay is much higher, but the hours are much worse. And our nurses, with their degrees and their master's degrees and the work that they do every day, I think many times on the outside looking in, people don't realize what our school nurses are doing, but they're involved in writing policy, they're involved in working working with students with immunizations. They're involved in working with our students with disabilities who have sometimes very unique medical needs, and they always do it with a smile on their face and really are there to support staff, support our students, and we couldn't do it without all their great work. So again, thank you to our teachers and to our nurses as we celebrate them next week. And that brings me to the end of my...
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I gave my wife an excuse to watch a board meeting online, so...
All right. Wonderful. All right, we're on page 4 of the agenda. Under board business, we have our policy review for second reading and approval. Is there anything you wanted to say about that?
Yep, this is, we do have, just so you know, the next, we've had a couple of policy committee meetings, so the next board meeting will have quite a few policies up for first read. This one is just a reminder, we really made some minor changes, and it was around a new board member orientation, sort of what, making sure that we encourage new board members to attend both local PD sessions and even things that we can do within our school district to support our new board members, one of them being in the audience. And then a student representative to the Board of Education. Claire did such a good job, we decided to change it a little bit to make whoever takes over for Claire have a little bit more, she's got to live up to, he or she has to live up to what Claire does. So we just made some minor changes to that, and same with the committees of the board. No major changes, but some small changes within there.
All right.
And there were no, we got no
comments.
feedback, no public comments on these for the second read.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion and a second that the above policies be approved as presented?
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, thank you. All right, textbook approval for PHS. May I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education approve the above recommended textbooks as presented on April 17th, 2018? Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, thank you. All right, President's remarks or presentation. So John Piper gave me this reminder for the annual meeting at Shadow Lake Golf and Racquet Club, which is on May 23rd of this, I was going to say May 23rd of this month. Yes. But I did say May 23rd of this month. Okay, so anyway, if you plan to go, please let Sharon know so that we can get the registration taken care of. There's a social hour, Carol, and then there's jazz ensemble, Carol, dinner, and then the annual business meeting. So that is that.
I'll be going. I don't know if anybody else.
Yeah, I
Mark?
think I'll be
Okay.
going. I think I'll be going.
So
yeah.
this is a time when the Monroe County School Board Association takes its deep breath at the end of the year and honors its retiring board members
Carol.
as well, including Carol and Mike Suffoletto, who filled in this year as president from what we call Penfield North, Webster School District. But it's at Shadow Lake for the second year in a row, so the staff has been very pleased
Yeah.
with Shadow Lake, so
Well, they
hopefully...
do, yeah, and they do a good
They've done a
job.
great job, yeah, so hopefully it'll continue.
Very good.
Thanks.
Barb.
Sharon, you can put me down for the social hour because I tee off at 6 o'clock at Shadow Lake, so
Social hour.
at 5:30 and then at 6 o'clock I'll have to tee off.
Goodness.
Unless it rains, and then I'll be there.
She'll eat if it rains.
Yeah, there you go.
Preservation's getting complicated.
Share with you.
Pending weather.
All right. No new business. All right. There being no, okay.
Sorry.
You almost missed it there.
Oh,
That's
wait, am
okay.
I on? I'm on. We met about the handbook,
Yes.
and so you guys are going to get a copy of the handbook soon via email to look at our comments and changes.
Right.
And then we hope to have it finalized soonish.
Soonish, yes.
Like
Yeah,
hopefully
there's
by
a-
our June meeting. That's
Yes.
the goal.
Yeah, there's a few things we're looking to just
Yeah,
finish and wrap
so
up
we hope
this
to wrap it
year.
up and have it out to the rest of the board probably the next week or two.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have a little, give you guys a couple weeks to look at it, and then
Yeah.
and I think we're good.
You'll get it by email showing
You'll get it showing all the changes that we're doing, all the parts that we're removing, and, you know, all the changes. So your feedback is really important to us, John, especially because John Otney.
Right.
Yes,
because-
reflect on your first year,
Yeah.
you know, to see what made sense and what didn't. So we did a lot of changes to make it more generic, so that it stays from year to year, and also some of our practices that we don't follow anymore.
That's right, exactly.
So-
And, you know, we definitely want to get this done because we have a new member that will be joining us. Dr. Putnam, is there something you want to say?
Yes, I just want to reference to anybody watching that you're referring to the board handbook.
Yes.
This is for board members. And
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Orientations, yep.
Right.
Exactly, and it is not a policy.
No, it's not a policy. This is right, exactly.
Thank you for
You're welcome.
clarifying that.
All right. There being no further business, may I have a motion and a second that the meeting be adjourned at 8:01 p.m.?
So moved.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you.
Okay.